Hi everyone, Richard Phillips back at you with some more modern action. Today we're going to be taking a look at a deck list that went 9-1 during the Swiss portion of the Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan in the hands of Alex Majlaton. Unfortunately, he went 0-6 in draft and was not able to make top 10 or really compete for top 10, or for top 8 rather. But his deck list itself went 9-1 in the modern portion, which I think is good enough to merit at least one playthrough. Very impressive record. There are only a few decks that actually did that well. A couple of things to note about this deck. It's very standard blue-white except for a couple of different things. First off, it's a little bit low on counter magic. It just has one negate, one logic knot, and one spell snare in addition to the cryptic commands over here. Usually you'll see most lists play like 2 logic knot or 2 mana leak, something like that. This one's a little bit lower on counter magic. Second, it plays a main deck Dragon Lord Ojutai, which is a very powerful finisher and really good in mid-range matchups. It dodges removal, it flies, it's hard to block, and it can get you card advantage. It plays a Vendilion Click main, which is really good against combo. It plays, in terms of the lands, a Minamo, School at Water's Edge. I can never pronounce this card. I always just call it the Water's Edge card or the Merfolk card because you see it usually in Merfolk, but this will allow us to untap either the Dragon Lord Ojutai or the Vendilion Click. Another thing is that it plays 25 lands, which is one more than you'll see usual. This is a good change. I like this. Out of the sideboard, we have a couple of interesting inclusions. First is an Elspeth, which is another finisher, very good in mid-range matchups. And a Surgical Extraction, which is a hedge of towards Burn and Dredge, which is a couple of this deck's weakest matchups. You can combine that with a couple of Rest in Peace. I'm happy to see 2 different types of graveyard interaction in the sideboard here. We got 2 Blessed Alliance, which are really good against Infect, which is another poor matchup for this deck, as well as a bunch of the human strategies that'll be attacking. We can gain life and prevent the attack. We got some more counter spells for big mana and control matchups. Stony Silence for the Affinity and Lantern matchups, and Timely Reinforcements for the Burn matchup. And without further ado, guys, we'll get ourselves moving into round 1, and I'll see you guys there. Alright, guys, back at you with some action here. We are taking this deck through a competitive league. It's round 1. We have won the dice roll, so we will go first. Alright, this hand has a couple of cantrips, a Search for Azcanta, and Sphinx's Rev, so we'll definitely keep this hand. We're not sure exactly what we want to Serum Visions into, but I'm going to guess that it's action, and I think it's probably worth casting on turn 1 because we have 2. Usually if you just have 1 Serum Visions, you don't want to cast it turn 1 into an unknown opponent, but because we have a turn 2 play, I think it's probably fine to just go ahead and cast the the Serum Visions, rather. Alright, so we drew a Supreme Verdict, and we've got a land and a Spell Snare. Actually, both of these probably are pretty good. Spell Snare is good in most matchups, especially game 1. So we will put the land on top and then the Spell Snare on top of that. That'll allow us to shuffle away the land if we don't decide we don't want it anymore. Alright, our opponent is playing some sort of black deck. This might be a Thoughtseize. If it's a Thoughtseize, it'll probably take our Search for Azcanta. Okay, Inquisition. So it's a good thing that we kept that Spell Snare up. That means that we can play the Serum Visions and still hold up Spell Snare for next turn, which is very good. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and actually fetch with this land here because we don't want to screw up our scry with the Serum Visions. Just go ahead and get an island. The fact that our opponent is playing black-red leads me to believe that there's a chance there's a Blood Moon in our opponent's deck. Alright, we get a little bit punished for drawing our Gideon of the Trials, but I think that both of these cards are actually great, so I'm going to top the Snapcaster Mage, top the Celestial Colonnade on top of that. We'll draw the Celestial Colonnade next turn, play that, and then we can play the Plains the turn after that. So there's definitely an argument that we could have fetched a duel there and shocked it in. Yep, and we'll go ahead and Spell Snare that. Yeah, our opponent's definitely on the Pyromancer build that very easily could have Blood Moon in it. So we'll play the Colonnade and pass the turn. This gives us the option next turn to either cast Gideon or Supreme Verdict, or I guess technically we could Sphinx's Rev for 1 if we wanted to. Alright, our opponent will be able to take either the Rev or the Gideon here. They take the Gideon. Graveyards are kind of important in this matchup, so I'll pop them out for you guys. Collective Brutality. That's interesting. All right, so they are going for our Sphinx's Rev. We have our Snapcaster Mage on top, which is very good. We have the option here of casting Serum Visions, which is it's a pretty tempting play, honestly. I think we're going to go ahead and do it, actually. We don't really have any other cards in our graveyard right now that do much other than Sphinx's Rev, but that's for many later turns. All right, we drew a Spreading Seas. We have a Dragonlord Ojutai on top and another Dragonlord Ojutai. So I think actually I'm going to want to top both of these because Ojutai is going to be really good in this matchup, and then next turn we can Spreading Seas them off 2 lands. So I'm going to go ahead and top that and top the Spreading Seas here, and hopefully we can draw a land. Alright, so we should be able to get rid of both of their red sources next turn. Which is good. They currently only have 3 instants or sorceries in their graveyard, which means that they can't cast the... Okay, and we'll go ahead, we'll just discard the Supreme Verdict here. So we should be able to take them off both red mana next turn, which is very encouraging. They need double red in order to cast their Bedlam Revelers. And we drew a third Spreading Seas, which is nice. So if they draw another land next turn, we can get them off of another land. Okay, they can take our Spreading Seas. And they drew a Mountain. Okay, so they still need one more red in order to cast a Bedlam Reveler, which is good. We'll just go ahead and slam this Dragonlord Ojutai. Our opponent will cast Faithless Looting. They're looking for interaction. Or possibly a way to get ahead, like Lingering Souls would be pretty good here too, just for them to block. Alright, the fact that we that our opponent doesn't have red and black mana up means that we can probably go ahead and begin getting in there with both the Colonnade and the Dragonlord Ojutai. So our opponent would have to have exactly Fatal Push as their 1 card left in their hand, and I think the chances of that are very low. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put our opponent on a 2-turn clock here. Alright, and we are going to take the Path to Exile. Put the other cards in any order, because we can actually cast the Path to Exile. Seemed better than taking a land there. And we'll see if our opponent can interact with this Dragonlord Ojutai. Alright, they're going to flash back Faithless Looting. Discarding a Lingering Souls. Okay. Alright. So we have a couple of different lines that we can take here. We can take a aggressive line, which includes casting a Path to Exile on a Spirit here, and then attacking our opponent down to 1 next turn, where they'd have to chump the Dragonlord. And we'd be able to get in with the Celestial Colonnade. I don't think we need to do that here. Okay, the fact that we drew the second Path to Exile means that we're a little bit punished for our play, but we'll still go ahead and do it. Yeah, drawing exactly the second Path to Exile there punished us a little bit for the play that we made. But I'm just going to go ahead and we're just going to get in with both here. We're not going to cast the Path. Alright, so our opponent's down to 1. They're going to need a way to deal with our Celestial Colonnade. and a way to deal with the Dragon Lord Ojutai over the course of the next couple of turns. And then I think here casting this path is more or less free. There's no way for us to get blown out here. Alright, and our opponent concedes. Good. So that means they probably had one removal spell in hand, but not two. Alright, so we were able to win that game, which is great. Our opponent's on a token strategy, and also on a Thoughtseize strategy. So I think the cards that we want to bring in this matchup are the cards that are very high impact. So, for example, like Elspeth, I think, is actually pretty good in this matchup. As you saw that game, like this Dragon Lord Ojutai basically won the game on its own. It was that plus a land that kind of did it. So I think I definitely want to bring that in. Surgical Extraction might be fine. I think I definitely want the Rest in Peace. One of the main engines for our opponent is the Bedlam Reveler engine, and I think shutting that down with Rest in Peace is a little bit more important than trying to shut it down other ways. Cards that I don't think are great in this matchup, Ruined Halo, because our opponent's going to be going wide with tokens. That card's not necessarily the best in this matchup. I don't think the card Negate is very good either. Our opponent's going to be casting Bedlam Revelers is the main thing that we want to be able to counter. Other considerations would be like a... I don't know. Actually, don't really know. I don't think Vendilion Click does very good in this matchup. Our opponent doesn't have any Planeswalkers for it to pressure, and it gets shut down really easy by Lingering Souls. So I think I like cutting that. Gideon of the Trials is also not very strong here, but I can't really see a situation where I'd want any of these cards over the Gideon. The only other card that looks okay is maybe the Surgical Extraction, but I think even that's a little bit narrow. And then you got to think is whether or not, because the only way we can cast this is by paying 2 life. So I think that we're fine leaving it as is, but I could definitely see, let's cut one of the Gideons and we'll bring in one Surgical. Because our opponent's going to be going wide with tokens, and Gideon doesn't do very good against that kind of strategy. Alright, well we have a Rest in Peace, and our hand is very Thoughtseize proof, so we just have to draw some lands. Alright, our opponent will take the Rest in Peace. We just need to draw lands here. Alright, we drew a land for the turn, which is excellent. We'll show our opponent the land that we have. Opponent's going to try to get something on board here. Alright, they're going to get a young Pyromancer on board, which means that this path was very timely. So we're just going to go ahead and try to think if whether or not pathing them now is probably... It's probably best to just path them during their upkeep. We'll just go ahead and do it then. That gives them one less land to work with during the turn, and I don't think we can get really all that punished. If they still have bolts in their deck and they want to bolt us, I think that's fine. There's not too much that would punish us here. Yeah, okay, good. So it seems like theoretically correct to bolt or path them during their upkeep, because that means that they got one less land this turn to deal with. If they play a threat here, we can Detention Sphere it next turn, like if they play another Pyromancer. If they play a Blood Moon here, we are a little soft to that. Okay, Molten Rain. Interesting. Alright. So they got rid of one of our lands, which is good. It's a good thing that we drew another one. Opponent's down to only 3 cards in hand. We'll go ahead and we'll just take them off their white source. Alright, and we drew another land, which is perfect. If our opponent has a Lingering Souls in hand and no way to discard it, now they can't cast it. Liliana. Alright, that's a good draw for our opponent. I think we're going to discard the Sphinx's Revelation here. I don't see a situation where we're going to be able to cast that anytime soon. So I'm going to... It's either that or the Elspeth, I think. I guess technically we can just draw like 1 or 2 cards off of this, so we'll get rid of the Elspeth. We're so far away from 6 mana, and a Sphinx's Rev for 1 or 2 is not ideal in the slightest, but it's not, like, the worst, I guess. Alright, so our opponent's discarding. It discards an Inquisition and a Faithless Looting. It looks like next turn they're planning on flashing back the Faithless Looting, or sorry, the Lingering Souls. So we now have the second Detention Sphere, which means we can first Detention Sphere the Liliana, and then we can Detention Sphere the tokens. And we still just need to draw lands off the top. Wow, it's surprising our opponent played that land there, because they have that Faithless Looting in their graveyard. I would have held that land to flash back the Faithless Looting. Our opponent doesn't need to get the souls out like this turn. They know what our hand is for. Okay, so they never mind. They drew a Bedlam Reveler, so they just wanted to get the Bedlam Reveler out, and now they'll play the Lingering Souls. Okay, so that makes a little bit of sense. Oh, Inquisition to get rid of the Detention Sphere. All right. Well, the Molten Rain got us pretty good this game, because we're behind a turn now, so they have to take probably the Detention Sphere here. I mean, I guess they could take Sphinx's Rev, but right now we can't cast Sphinx's Rev. So, all right, we drew a Verdict, which isn't an amazing draw, but hopefully our opponent will flash back the Lingering Souls this turn, and we'll be able to draw Plains and cast a Supreme Verdict. All right, our opponent has a Thoughtseize. That's not very good. I think that's probably the end of the game for us here. Whiffing on too many lands. Yeah, so now we need to draw like land into Supreme Verdict again. We're going to be taking 4 here, and at least 4 next turn. Oh, they have a Liliana too. Alright, I think it's pretty safe to just concede here. There's no way that we can fight through all of this stuff. Yeah, we'd have drawn, Cryptic Command and then Field it. Yeah, and we wouldn't have been able to cast either of those. Alright, so based on how our opponent boarded, do we want to board any differently? Yeah, the Gideon still didn't seem very good. The Surgical, I think, is really poor. So I think I'm gonna board that out. I'm gonna bring the Negate back in because we see our opponent has land destruction spells in their deck. So we'll board that back in. And this is also a good hand. Generally, if you know that your opponent's playing Thoughtseize in their deck, you don't want to be mulliganing hands that have lands and spells. You're not really looking for a great curve, and you're not really looking to be high impact with your early spells. It's more or less, can you weather the Thoughtseize storm that your opponent's going to be throwing at you, and then be able to, stabilize with a threat. So this hand can do that. This hand, if our opponent casts Thoughtseize, they can take Gideon and, the Snapcaster with the first 2, but then we still have Celestial Colonnade and hopefully, the draws off the top to get into some sort of aggressive stance. Alright, our opponent's going with a Faithless Looting. This is good so far. Alright, a Collective Brutality. Interesting. Alright, I'm just going to play basic Island here and pass. Something that's really interesting is if our opponent casts an exactly Inquisition of Kozilek next turn, if we should flash in the Snapcaster Mage just as beatdowns. Okay, so our question here is, because our opponent's definitely going to take the Snapcaster Mage with the Inquisition because it's a lot better than the Path. Do we just let our opponent take the Snapcaster Mage? Because Path to Exile is very bad on this board right now. Our opponent isn't playing anything. But I guess it could be good later. Like, they're 100% taking the Snapcaster Mage. So we need to figure out whether or not we're okay with that. Or if we want to get the Snapcaster Mage on the battlefield and begin trying to beat down with it, forcing them to only take the Path to Exile. This is a really tough decision. Based on their hand that they discarded Collective Brutality, leads me to believe that they probably have another Collective Brutality in hand. Which would mean that this Cryptic Command's going to go down. Yeah, I think I'm flashing in the Snapcaster Mage for, more ostensibly no value. But the Path to Exile is still quite a few turns off from being good. Our opponent would have played a Young Pyromancer, I think, during that turn. If they were... planning on, if they had it, okay, so they're going to take my path and pass the turn. Okay, and we happen to draw exactly path, which is, or sorry, exactly another Snapcaster Mage, which was the one draw that would really allow the line that we took to pay off, which was a very aggressive line. One thing we can do here is we can actually Snapcaster path the Snapcaster so that we can play Gideon next turn, which isn't a totally unreasonable play based on, you know, whatever our opponent's playing here. See what our opponent does. All right, they're going to Molten Rain our Celestial Colonnade, which I think is fine. Just got a Hallowed Fountain tapped here, and we'll allow that to resolve. All right, and we drew Gideon, which is a great draw. So we'll go ahead and we'll get down the Gideon. We're going to prevent all the damage the Swamp will deal. Generally, if your opponent can be playing Bolt in their deck, or some sort of way to deal 3 damage, you want to plus the Gideon before you emblem it, because your opponent can't respond to the Gideon while it's still at 3 loyalty. I saw this in the Pro Tour that some of the decks were playing a Manamorphose, which I thought was kind of cool. This is going to allow them to play Lingering Souls, it looks like, this turn. So that's a very cool innovation in my opinion. I think that's real neat. So, oh no, okay, they don't want to make white. Never mind. But like that would allow them to play Lingering Souls from their hand with this mana, which is kind of cool. And it's just cycles. Wouldn't be good in, you know, really any other deck, but a one of in a fair deck like this is something interesting. I hadn't considered it before, and it must have worked out really well in their testing. All right, they played Dreadbore, which has, you know, flashbacks of Standard right there. Used to get my Planeswalkers Dreadboard all the time. All right, we're definitely going to use that Hallowed Fountain there, untapped, or put it in untapped. Man, Dreadbore is beating against a Planeswalker deck like that. It's hopefully we don't see too much more Dreadbore in the format, or our Gideon package in this deck is going to be significantly worse than it currently is. So Snapcaster's dealt 6 damage already this game, which is pretty cool. It's a lot of damage for Mr. Snappy. By shocking in these Hallowed Fountain, we telegraph to our opponent that we have Cryptic Command in hand. Now they're trying to figure out a way that they can play around the Cryptic Command. So normally, alright, and what do they want to do here? They want us to reveal our hand, choose an instant and sorcery, discard it. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and counter draw this. We could try to be fancy, and we could try to bounce one of their team or something like that, or bounce one of their lands or something like that, but I don't think that's correct. Okay, so we drew a Rest in Peace, which is a very good draw here. Our opponent's going to pass the turn. Alright, and we got a Field of Ruin. I think because we drew the land, I'm going to try to get down the Gideon first. Gideon seems like it's a must answer for our opponent. So then next turn we can actually snap Path plus Rest in Peace. So we're hoping our opponent wants to play some sort of creature here so that we can Snapcaster Path plus Rest in Peace. But we're in a very good position here. If we draw another land, we have Snapcaster Cryptic up. So far, this Snapcaster Mage has dealt 8 damage. So it turns out that it was a little bit of a loose play by us, I think, when we did it. But it turned out to be exactly what we needed. Our opponent kept a very reactive hand, most likely on the back of this Molten Rain here, plus a couple of Collective Brutalities. And they didn't really have a good way to answer the Snapcaster Mage. Our opponent has significantly more cards in hand. They still have 4 cards in hand, but we have a Gideon in play, and we have a Rest in Peace in hand. Alright, so Collective Brutality, and what did they do? They're doing all 3 modes. Okay, well, they're going to whiff in our hand, which is good, and they're going back up to 12. Okay, and they're going to play a Bedlam Reveler, so we're actually going to get to do the full play that we discussed earlier, which is that we're going to get to snap Path the Reveler and then play a Rest in Peace. Alright, so we will Snapcaster, target Path, Path the Reveler, we'll play this land, and we'll go ahead and play the Rest in Peace, and then we'll 0 the Gideon, and we want to kill our opponent as fast as possible. So now our opponent has to play blockers next turn or they're dead. And, yep, our opponent can't do anything in response to the Gideon plus Rest in Peace plan. Alright, guys. That's a good start for us moving into this league here. We're 1-0 against one of the decks that also went, had 27 match points or better. I believe it went 9-0-1 in the modern portion of the Pro Tour. So one of the best decks to test against would be another one that had a similar record in the 10 rounds of Modern at the Pro Tour, and ours came out on top. This is a great hand. We have Serum Visions plus Spreading Seas into Detention Sphere, so I'm just going to go ahead and get Basic Island, I think, with this Flooded Strand here so that we don't screw up our scries. You'll notice that one of my favorite things to do as a player is to fetch for basic lands, and sometimes it gets me into trouble because most decks aren't really built to be to do that. I'm going to put both of these lands on the bottom. Our chances of drawing more lands is really high, and we don't have anything else going on. Oh, okay, our opponent's on Emeria Control, which is one of my favorite decks. It's actually one of my first decks that I ever played. We're going to go ahead and immediately Spreading Seas the Emeria because there's very few cards that actually matter in our deck in this matchup. Our opponent's going to be playing a bunch of Wraths and a bunch of creatures that gain incremental value. Alright, Squadron Hawk, there's the first of them. We have Detention Sphere, which is a good answer to that, but our opponent maybe is on the mono-white version. Usually the blue-white version doesn't play Squadron Hawk. Alright. I think here we're going to go ahead and shock in the Hollowed Fountain and either Logic Knot or Vendilion Click our opponent based on what they do. If they get at their end step without casting a spell, we'll cast Vendilion Click. Otherwise, we'll plan on Logic Knotting one of their plays. If they can just cast another Squadron Hawk, we're fine. Oh, actually, no, wait. Our opponent only took one Squadron Hawk. So we can counter a Squadron Hawk for sure then. Because that'll break their Squadron Hawk chain. Man, this is so weird. Just the fact that they... Okay, so they're going to Field of Ruin our Hollowed Fountain, which we're totally fine with. We're going to float a blue here. And we'll get a white. Oh, okay, so they're on Martyr proc. Interesting. Alright, we just kind of need to ask our question here is, do we care about this Martyr of Sands? And, there's a chance that this is a lot of life. I feel like this just has to be the wrong spell to counter in this this case. So I think we'll let it go. I think I'm fine with letting it go. And we'll go ahead and play our Vendilion Click and look at our opponent's hand. Alright, our opponent has Squadron Hawk, Path to Exile, Banishing Light, Sarah Ascendant. Alright, well, if we push the Banishing Light, it's going to be very hard for our opponent to kill a Gideon. We have Flagstones and a Plains. Our opponent doesn't really have any card selection, so it doesn't really matter if we push one of their cards or not. Yeah, let's go ahead and we'll just push this Banishing Light to the bottom. That's fine. We just don't want our opponent to have ways to interact with Gideon, because Gideon's going to be really good in this matchup. Alright, so we'll just play the the Celestial Colonnade tapped, and we're going to go ahead and take this opportunity here because we won't be able to hold up Logic Knot. We're going to go ahead and get rid of the Martyr of Sands before our opponent can gain a bunch of life. And the main reason I want to do this is because it makes it very hard for our opponent to leverage their Serra Ascendant in any meaningful way. Alright, our opponent has a Gideon. They're going to prevent the damage and play the Serra Ascendant. But the Serra Ascendant is just a 1-1 because they weren't able to gain a bunch of life off of the other stuff, or the by revealing a bunch of lands, or not lands, but white cards. Sorry, I am explaining that very poorly. All right, we have a Gideon now. We're going to make our opponent attack, and we will trade off the Vendilion Click with the Serra Ascendant if our opponent doesn't plus the Gideon first. And it says prevent all damage target permanent would deal. So we would, like, damage would still be dealt to it. Okay. So our opponent's just going to go ahead and attack the Gideon here with the Serra Ascendant and the Squadron Hawk. That's fine if our opponent wants to get a bunch of Squadron Hawks. We're cool with that. That's what we signed up for. To note, Field of Ruin's very bad in this matchup. Field of Ruining a Flagstones is one of the worst plays we can make. Our opponent searched out 2 more Squadron Hawks. Or just 1 more Squadron Hawk, it looks like, actually. Alright. Well, we have a bunch of Wraths in the deck, so that's good. And our opponent chose not to use Squadron Hawk's ability, which is very strange. Okay. Alright, we drew another Hallowed Fountain. This is very good. I'm going to go ahead and shock in this Hallowed Fountain here. And we're going to go ahead and plus on our opponent. We know our opponent has a Path to Exile in hand. But what this is going to allow us to do is rev up the Colonnade and force our opponent to path the Colonnade. Seems pretty good, I think. Pretty sure. This also allows us to just Sphinx's Rev for a few here. I think because our opponent hasn't really shown us much in terms of other interaction here, I'm just going to take this giant hit here. Yeah, okay. And we'll see what our opponent does. I'm fine with drawing 3 cards here. That seems fine to me. So we'll just go ahead and draw 3 cards now. And then we can use a Snapcaster later to draw some more cards, but 3 seems good. Alright. Alright, cool. We drew a Snapcaster Mage, so that means we can draw some more cards later. Go ahead and play that. We're going to go ahead and tick up over there. We can also path, or we can use our Cryptic Command to bounce our opponent's Gideon and then counter it on a later turn, which is kind of cool. And I think one of the things that we should also start thinking about is beginning to leverage these Field of Ruins. We'll go ahead and take this damage here again. This is fine. But I think I'm going to get rid of the Mistfell Plains using one of these Field of Ruins at the end step. Alright, so we will go ahead and get rid of this Mistfell Plains, paying these 2. Alright, we'll get an island. That's good. And then I think, actually, what we're going to do is we're going to try to just get a little bit of value out of this Cryptic Command here. We're going to go ahead and return the Gideon and draw a card. Awesome, and we drew a Supreme Verdict, which is great. Alright, so we will begin by playing this island here. And then we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, and we will cast the Supreme Verdict. Clear some stuff out of the way here. Alright. And we do know that our opponent has a path to exile. So we're just going to tick up the Gideon, and we'll pass the turn. Our opponent doesn't really have anything that we want to specifically Spreading Seas yet. Alright, so we were going to go ahead and we're just going to pay full mana for this because we don't want to exile too many cards out of our graveyard. Our opponent has four lands open, so we have to do this for at least X is 5. So we'll do it there, X is 5. Alright. And our opponent will pass the turn. Alright, we might as well start getting down some Spreading Seas. So we'll get the flagstones here. Our opponent can Ghost Quarter their own land in order to negate the Spreading Seas. And I think we're fine with that. Okay. So we'll draw a card off of that. And we'll go ahead and we'll Spreading Seas one of these planes here. Just so we can draw a card. And we'll play a land and tick up on our opponent. We have a path to exile if our opponent plays something that is on the larger side. And then next turn, I think we'll probably Snapcaster Cryptic to draw a bunch of cards and then hopefully be in a very, very good position from that point. One thing we do need to think about is the clock a little bit in this matchup, so we should play as fast as possible. Alright, we'll just go ahead and play the Flooded Strand here and pass the turn. And we'll Snapcaster draw a bunch of cards at the end of our opponent's turn here. Martyr of Sands is fine. At this point, Martyr of Sands is a little bit worse than it would be normally. I'm going to go ahead and get our other island here, I guess. And cast the Snapcaster Mage. And we will target Sphinx's Revelation. And we'll go ahead and rev for a bunch. I'm not going to play around Mana Tithe. If our opponent has a Mana Tithe, that's fine. It's good on our opponent for playing Mana Tithe. Alright, so we did pretty well there. We drew a bunch of cards. I'm going to not expose the Water's Edge because the Water's Edge can be incredibly important if we're planning on getting there with Ojutai. We'll go ahead and top the Celestial Colonnade because I'd like to play that this turn. And we definitely want the Cryptic Command and probably not the Wrath because we already have one in hand. We will force our opponent to attack the into us. And we're going to go ahead and get in there with the Snapcaster Mage. We still have the mana up here where we can Snapcaster Cryptic Command. Alright, now our opponent's going to block. And probably, nope, not even reveal any cards. Okay. So we know our opponent still has a path to exile in their hand. Alright, nothing still. We're fine with that too. Alright, so now basically we need to figure out whether or not we want to start fighting over Path to Exiles. And I don't think we do yet. I think if we draw one more counterspell or one more thing to do, we can definitely do that. I do want to get this Snapcaster Mage down if possible, so I will Cryptic Command counter draw with the Snapcaster, I believe, because I want to start getting a clock on our opponent. Alright, Emiria is a good thing to Field of Ruin, so we'll go ahead and Field of Ruin that. Get our last land out of our deck. Alright, Search for Azcanta is great. That'll let us begin to leverage our deck a little bit against our opponent. And I think we will wait one more turn now that we've gotten down the Azcanta. We do need to be a little bit conscientious about decking ourselves. We do have Gideon of the Trials to prevent that from happening, but I think that's fine. Alright, so Martyr of Sands is okay. We'll go ahead and throw a Path at the Martyr of Sands, I think, honestly, at the end of the turn here. We have a bunch of paths and nothing really to do for it. If our opponent wants to start reveal some cards from their hand, that's fine. We would actually prefer that they reveal what they have in their hand. The information is significantly more... Okay, so they have 2 Day of Judgments, a Path, and a Squadron Hawk. Okay, so they go up to 32. That's fine. Do we want to try to get a clock down? No, probably not. We would not like to put Gideon in the graveyard. We would love to transform Azcanta. Alright. So we will activate the Gideon. Our opponent will try to Path it. We will go ahead and just Cryptic Command it. Alright, and I think a play that we should make here, because I wanted to draw the card earlier, but I might not want to later. Or, sorry, I wanted to draw the card earlier, but I might want to actually use it later. I'm going to counter, and I'm going to return this Spreading Seas to our hand so that we can Spreading Seas one of their other lands at a later time. So we'll have our opponent take 6 here. And we'll go ahead and resolve a Gideon. We're just going to go ahead and emblem the Gideon right now. So now we actually can't deck ourselves while both of these Gideons are around, which is good insurance, because that's one of the ways that our opponent could definitely try to win this game is by decking. Okay, so our opponent found a Oblivion Ring. So we know that our opponent's hand is Squadron Hawk, Day of Judgment, Day of Judgment. So I think I'm fine with Snapcaster Mage, Cryptic, counter draw here. Oh, we gotta let that resolve. Okay, now we will counter target spell, draw a card. Okay, and our opponent's going to use their Day of Judgment, so we know that our opponent's hand is Squadron Hawk, Day of Judgment. Don't really see any reason to force our opponent to use the Ghost Quarters. So we'll just go ahead and get in for 10 here. We will activate the Search for Azcanta right now. The reason why I want to do it now is because then I can use my Serum Visions to set up some more draws. Alright, we'll go ahead and we'll take a Path to Exile, I guess, any order, and then we'll use the Serum Visions so that we can draw a card that matters next turn, which is Detention Sphere, and we don't really want another land. If we can get value out of the Spell Snare, we'll do it. Okay, Banishing Light. Interesting. Alright, so our opponent is going to get to use this Banishing Light, which isn't ideal, but I think it's fine because we can Detention Sphere next turn. Alright, so our opponent's going to get rid of our Gideon. Still Squadron Hawk Day of Judgment in hand. Alright, and it's probably at this point worth firing up the a Celestial Colonnade and making our opponent use their Ghost Quarter. Make this a 4/4. Make our opponent attack the Gideon. And we can actually go ahead and fire up a second Celestial Colonnade, forcing our opponent to use their other Ghost Quarter on this one, and then next turn we'll be able to get in with the other Ghost Quarter, which will make it lethal. Alright, yeah, might as well float some mana here. Float. Okay, no more lands in our deck. Okay. Opponent has Squadron Hawk, Wrath of God in their hand. We don't have any counter spells here, but that's okay, actually. Our opponent needs to play their Squadron Hawk. Oh, they found a Gideon. Wow. Alright. Well, that's something I didn't honestly expect them to have. Okay, so they have that, and they have a Squadron Hawk still. But they didn't want to play their Squadron Hawk, which is interesting. Alright, we don't have any lands for that, actually. So we will suit up this Gideon and suit up this Gideon. And there's no reason to also suit up the Colonnade because everything needs to go at Gideon. And that looks fine. We'll pass the turn. Alright, and we get to move to the sideboard. Alright, so against mono white Emeria Proc. Cards that are good in this matchup. Honestly, not too many. I mean, as you saw there, that game was pretty easy. We'll bring in the Elspeth because Elspeth seems really good against what they're trying to do. Against their fast starts, it might be nice to have a Blessed Alliance in the deck. We know that they have some Gideons. Ruined Halo also seems pretty good, so I guess we'll keep that too. Cards that are bad in this matchup. Once again, Vendilion Click doesn't seem like it matches up really well. They have a bunch of 1/1s. They also play a bunch of Wraths, so there's a chance that maybe we should be cutting a Verdict, but I think that we're still the control deck in the matchup. Negate seemed fine, not amazing. Spell Snare didn't seem to hit too much. We'll get rid of a Spell Snare. Alright, we'll do that. We'll submit like that. Alright, something I will keep in mind here is that our opponent's almost 4 minutes up on clock from us. And if this goes to 3 games, I will be low on time by the time the 3rd game begins. Alright, this hand can draw some cards and has some other stuff going on, so we'll keep it. I think because our opponent's playing fast or has a fast start here, we also want to try to get a little bit of a fast start. So we'll use the Serum Visions, and this is great. We want both of these spells with the Path on top, so that we can cast the Path next turn and play a Colonnade. We have like the mono Colonnades hand. All right, Squadron Hawk, that's fine. All right, our opponent's all the way up on Squadron Hawks, which is kind of funny. We are just going to play a Colonnade here and pass the turn. Our opponent's going to be able to gain a lot of life next turn, but it seems better than trying to play our lands in a awkward manner, which is what we would have to do otherwise. Is our opponent just going to go and field? Wow. All right, that's really aggressive. Okay. We're going to get an island, and then we'll just play the Mystic Gate next turn to cast the Gideon. That seems fine. Good old Mystic Gate, one of my favorite lands. Very few of the decks can support a Mystic Gate, just because you can't really cast one mana spells with Mystic Gate. It's really, really awkward in that case. But works out real well here. Opponent's probably going to sack this Martyr here at the end of the turn. And they're going to... Oh, they're surgicaling a... Wow. Okay, well... It looks like our opponent misboarded a little bit, but they're going to get our Colonnades. All right. Well, that was a little devastating. Jeez. Just get 3 or 2 lands out of our hand. It's like a Wrench Mind plus a Stone Rain. Built into a 0 mana card. Opponent's going to get rewarded here. Alright, our opponent's going after our white lands. I honestly don't really know what our opponent's thinking here. Like, what is their goal with these Field of Ruins? Do they not think that we have, like, a good mana base or something? Like, I'm just very confused, to be perfectly honest. It's fine. Alright, we drew a Logic Knot. That's pretty good. Once again, I'm just going to go ahead and path this Martyr right now while they don't have any lands up. So that means that they can't leverage like large amounts of life gain here. And we're currently at parity with what they're trying to do. I'm going to hit the new Squadron Hawk art because I don't like this Squadron Hawk art as much as the old Squadron Hawk art. The old one has some memories of Cawblade for me, which is very nostalgic. Man, I can't believe we lost all of our lands. That's so rude. Okay, well, now we can see what our opponent's trying to do with the Crucible. I was worried about this. I think I mentioned this earlier. I said one of the things that that could go really poorly for us is if our opponent has Crucible of Worlds, and they do. So we have to get rid of that, because we will lose very quickly. An opponent says, "You're kidding." I don't know why we'd be kidding. Alright, and we drew a land, which is excellent. So we'll go ahead and get that land in there, and we will play the Dragonlord Ojutai. And we'll plus on this Squadron Hawk, and we'll pass the turn. Oh, that's cool. Our opponent has a cycling land. That's cool. That's a cool innovation. When I played Miria, it was blue-white. And cycling lands didn't exist at the time, but that's I could definitely see how cycling lands would be very good in the deck in very small number, like 1 or 2. Ranger of Eos, it's a good card for our opponent, very good card for our opponent. Lets them search up a couple of 1 mana cards. They search 2 Martyr of Sands. Okay. So looks like they plan on gaining some life here. Opponent's definitely ahead here, ahead on cards. Huh. Alright, I'm going to here prevent damage dealt to the, or damage dealt by the Ranger of Eos. And then set the Gideon trap, where our opponent now has to attack with Gideon, with all their creatures at the Gideon, and they can't interact with this Dragonlord Ojutai, so we'll get to each turn like pick off some stuff with the Gideon. Which is a really cool thing that this deck can do, is basically play Dragonlord as a defensively, and use it to just start picking off opponent's creatures. Alright, our opponent has an Oblivion Ring, which is unfortunate. Still have a couple of Martyr of Sands. Alright, we'll go ahead and set up our draw with Serum Visions. I need to be careful of time here. If time gets a little bit low and we're not making any headway, I'll just concede probably. Path we don't need. Cryptic we do. Go ahead and play that out. No reason to Spreading Seas any of our opponent's lands right now. We want, if our opponent plays an Emeria, we want to be able to interact positively with the Emeria. I almost forgot to plus the Gideon, so I'll make sure I do that real quick before the end of the turn. And that's it. We'll pass the turn. Alright. Drew the Cryptic command. So the one thing that's interesting about this matchup in general is that we have cards that our opponent really can't beat, mostly Sphinx's Revelation. Sphinx's Revelation, Cryptic Command, and Snapcaster Mage are all cards that our opponent just can't get even close to in terms of card quality. Alright, so our opponent has... Alright, so our opponent is revealing Martyr of Sands. They're revealing a Proclamation of Rebirth, a Squadron Hawk, and a Martyr of Sands. Okay. So if our opponent actually casts Proclamation of Rebirth, this could be a little bit bad for us. So okay, so it's return target card from graveyard with converted mana cost 1 to the battlefield. We will Cryptic that, counter, and draw. Oh, they're forecasting it. Alright, I'm smart. But once again, we need to figure out whether or not we want to... yeah, we need to figure out at what point we want to try to concede. Jace is a good reason to not concede, so we'll go ahead and plus, and we'll emblem this Gideon. Okay, so I think we're in a very good position now to not die, which I think is good. I think we can play this out for quite a while. Just let our opponent know that our plan is to deck them and that the game's not actually over. Our opponent's going after us. I don't see how they have a hawk lock. I'm not really seeing the hawk lock portion of whatever's going on here. Let's see, we'll play this out for another like 2 minutes and we'll see what happens. Alright. Opponent goes up to 52. They have Proclamation, which they'll be able to cast each turn. Alright, we'll go up, we'll ultimate this Jace when it gets up to 9, and we'll see what happens at that point. So, 1, 2, 3, Detention Sphere. Detention Sphere, the Oblivion Ring. Yes. Okay. Plus, target our opponent. Plus, target the ranger. Plus, in general. And then we'll start being able to get in with the Dragon Lord Ojutai, which is nice. Okay, our opponent has a Banishing Light, that's fine. Take the Detention Sphere, okay, that's interesting. That's cool, I like that. They're going after the Jace, interesting, okay. Luckily, we do need to, we do get to get in, or get our opponent a little bit here. See, our opponent doesn't know what's going on here. Alright, and we'll go ahead and block that thing, kill it. Draw a land, which is nice. Yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll just get in with everyone. We'll take the Sphinx's Rev. And we'll pass the turn. I think at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and concede and go on to game 3. I think that we win this game if it goes really long, but we're too low on clock because I've been talking. So we'll go ahead, we'll bring that in. We'll bring in the Rest in Pieces because our opponent's using, you know, could lock us out that way. The Ruined Halo didn't seem as important. It looked like our opponent was just trying to lock us out. We'll cut one Verdict. That's probably fine. And our opponent has Search for tomorrow, or has Surgical Extraction, so we'll cut our Search for tomorrow. Chance we should be bringing in Surgical also. I could definitely see that being a thing. We'll keep the hand with Rest in Peace and Gideon. Got to play a little bit fast here. Opponent's got a Mistville Plains. It's probably worth just getting down this other Colonnade, because knowing the way that our opponent plays, they'll probably just surgical the first card that hits the graveyard, which is funny. Go ahead and play this Gids. Alright, our opponent has Gideon also. Gideon battles are always interesting. Alright, Field of Ruin. Play the Flooded Strand. Play Rest in Peace. Plus on the Martyr, because we don't mind pathing the Gideon. Okay. Opponent Banishing Lights that. Okay, that's interesting. Sure. Not going to crack the Flooded Strand. There's no reason to yet. Play a Field of Ruin. Plus on the Gideon. Okay, our opponent plays a Ranger of Eos. Revealing a couple of Sarah Ascendants. We'll just go ahead and use a Spreading Seas here on the flagstones, I guess. Play Field of Ruin, plus on the Ranger, and we'll pass the turn. Alright, so they have Proclamation, Sarah Ascendant, Day of Judgment. Okay. Sure. Sarah Ascendant. Alright, this is a very nice draw by us. So we are going to go ahead and get our Elspeth down. Create some soldiers. Prevent damage dealt by the Sarah Ascendant, and pass the turn. So now we're in a very good position where this Elspeth, over the course of, you know, many turns, should be able to win this game for us. But we just need to play fast and smart. Opponent cycles. We know that they have a Proclamation and Sarah Ascendant, a Day of Judgment in their hand. Okay. Okay, that's fine. We're not even close to running out of basics yet, which is good. Okay, we'll float a white. We'll just get the other planes, that's fine. Okay. Sarah Ascendant, that's fine. We'll just go ahead and use our Wrath next turn. Alright, so we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, cast Wrath. 1, 2, 3. Oh, sorry, the other one should have been white. Crap. White. Detention Sphere. Go ahead and get rid of this Crucible. Yes. Play the planes. Create some soldiers. Prevent some damage. And pass the turn. We know our opponent has Proclamation and a couple other things. Alright, we'll go ahead and make some tokens. And we'll prevent some damage. And we'll shoot 3 of them at the Gideon of the Trials. Okay, our opponent's getting in there with the Sarah Ascendant. And they're going to Surgical Supreme Verdict. In response, we'll go ahead and path the Sarah Angel. And we'll go ahead and let our opponent do some searching. Cool, we drew a path. This is good, so that means we can do this. And we can make our opponent use the Ghost Quarter, which is cool. Go ahead and get an island. Okay. Opponent's going to use their Wrath of God. It looks like we fetched a little bit poorly here. We're going to get that Hallowed Fountain though. Yep. And path it. Alright. What's under here? Rest in peace. Alright, so we will go ahead and use the Detention Sphere on this to get the Rest in Peace going. So our opponent can't use their Reclamation anymore. Okay. Then we will make this 4/4. We'll make 3 1/1s. And we will attack. Alright, our opponent's using more removal. And they're going to play some Squadron Hawks. Max down on the Squadron Hawks. Alright, we'll go ahead and cast this. Bottom that. And bottom that. And 1, 2, 3, 4. Jace. Plus the Jace. Plus that. Make that 4/4. And attack. We will 0 this and that, and we're going to just go ahead and emblem this now because that means that we get a little bit more damage in this turn. And we'll pass the turn. Okay, our opponent plays a Ranger. And they got 2 Martyr of Sands. Okay. So they got 1 Martyr down. At the end of the turn, we will go ahead and play Snapcaster Mage. Plus that, or 0 that, plus that. Go ahead and bang our opponent for a bit. And we win the match. Good. All right. Well, apologize there for the little bit, less than perfect communication with you guys. I needed to make sure that we weren't going to time out there, and we didn't time out, which is good. Our opponent seemed like they thought they had us, and wasn't even close. Just like it wasn't the second game. Like we weren't dead the second game, but I conceded because I knew that we were going to run out of time to get out of it. If that was a paper Magic there, we would have absolutely played it out. It's one of the reasons why Magic Online is not the same as paper Magic. And paper Magic there, you play that out because we're ahead 1-0, and our opponent actually couldn't. I don't think they had a win. I don't really know what their win would have been, but I don't think they could have had one. They would have had to eventually. They would have started trying to martyr the Sarah Sedments over and over again, and I think we could have had enough paths and other interaction to get out of it. Alright, so this is a more reasonable hand against, like a reasonable opponent. Because we have the 2 Serum Visions again, I feel like I need to cast Serum Visions on turn 1, because we're looking for more lands and more spells. Alright, so we have another pass, so we have more interaction. I don't think we want either of these cards. We actually just want more lands at this point. Because we have, like 3 draws here to hit another land. Alright, our opponent's playing Burn, so we will definitely Spreading Seas their land here. That sometimes can be backbreaking for a Burn player if they wind up suddenly low on lands, or lands that don't work. Because like, if they have Ixalan of the Great Rebel in their hand, they will not be able to cast it next turn if we cast the Spreading Seas. Alright, we drew a land, that's great. We prefer it to be an untapped land, of course, but that's, maybe asking a little bit too much. Alright, we got another one. One that doesn't produce colors, but, once again, I think beggars can't really be choosers. So we're looking to draw some Gideons now. Gideon is one of the best cards in this matchup. Alright, Goblin Guide. Huh. I think next turn our plan is going to be to double path. Card on top of our library is a Glacial Fortress. Alright, that's pretty good, actually. So now we can play the Glacial Fortress and Serum Visions plus then path twice, which is cool. So we're not going to make it obvious that that's what we're going to do, so we're going to cast the Serum Visions now. Oh, we drew a Ruined Halo. That's interesting. Alright, I don't think we want either of these. We want some way to close the game now. One of the keys to this matchup is that we need to be able to close the game. Our opponent is going to eventually be able to win if we don't really interact with them. Or sorry, not if we don't put any pressure on, not if we don't interact with them. We are interacting with them. Alright, our Spreading Seas looks like it's kind of taking its course here. Alright, they got a Grim Lavamancer, that's fine. We can snap path the Grim Lavamancer at a later time. I think our opponent thinks we have a counter spell because of the way that we left our mana open, so they were trying to play a bait spell. Alright, Goblin Guide. One thing that's interesting that we can definitely do here is we can just path the Monastery Swift Spear and the Lavamancer and then play Ruined Halo and name Goblin Guide, which I'm thinking about doing. We'll see what we reveal here. So we reveal Search for Azcanta. I don't know if that changes anything that we want to do. I think it's more important that we just take less damage here, so I think I'm gonna just go ahead and path 2 Goblin Guides. I think I'm happy with this. Yeah, a little unsure about this, but I think this was overall correct. We'll take 1 off the Swift Spear. Our opponent just has 3 mountains in their deck. Search for Azcanta. Okay. Here, I'm going to name... because of the fact that it goes into the long game, I think I'm going to name Grim Lavamancer with this Ruined Halo and then play the Search for Azcanta. So that way we don't really have to worry too much about this Grim Lavamancer, which is kind of cool. And we'll go ahead and play the Search for Azcanta, which will allow us to filter our draws a little bit. If our opponent plays any white mana, we'll Field of Ruin it, because I think one of the ways that we can win this game is by keeping our opponent off of white mana. Our opponent plays an Ixalan. That's not great. And we get Lava Spiked. Okay. So I think next turn our tentative plan is to flash in Snapcaster, block the Ixalan to trade, and then once that dies, path the Monastery Swift Spear maybe? Or I guess we could even path it before combat. We're still going to take 4 damage either way, which isn't ideal. Alright, let's see what card's on top of our library. Cryptic Command. I actually don't think we want to put that in the graveyard. That'll buy us a whole combat step. So we'll say no. Play a Celestial Colonnade and pass the turn, with the plan of, at the end of the turn, just tapping our opponent's team. Or at the beginning of our opponent's combat step, tapping our opponent's team. They're incentivized to cast a spell before combat too, which is kind of cool, because of the Monastery Swift Spear. So if they cast a spell here, we'll counter it and tap their team. Alright, here, because our opponent didn't do anything, I think I'm obliged to just flash in the Snapcaster Mage and see what happens. So we'll flash in the Snapcaster Mage with the attempt, or the plan to block the Ixalan. we'll target the path, but we're not going to cast it yet, because if we cast the path, we actually are going to be taking 1 more damage. Okay, our opponent's going to deal 2 damage to the Grim Lavamancer. That is fine. Yeah, I guess maybe that's a line I should have thought of before. For some reason, I just thought that our opponent would... I mean, I knew what the field of that the Ruined Halo didn't turn off the Grim Lavamancer when it came to attacking or hitting our creatures, but it just didn't really occur to me that we needed some other way to interact with what our opponent was trying to do. All right, we will definitely put Path in the graveyard. That's... You know what? Maybe we shouldn't have put Path in the graveyard. I don't really know what I'm talking about here, guys. Sorry, we probably should have put Path in the graveyard. Or we should have put Path in our hand. We'll just go ahead and Spreading Seas one of their lands, draw a card. Alright, cool. We drew a Dragonlord Ojutai. Alright, excellent. So we just need to prevent our opponent from killing us this next turn here. And then we can get down the Dragonlord Ojutai and then hopefully put our opponent on a clock here. So we'll let our opponent hit us for 1 here. No, we're not going to let our opponent hit us for 1. We're just going to go ahead, because our opponent can't kill us from this position if with any spell, even if they have land like Boros Charm or something like that. So I'm going to return the Monastery Swiftspear to our owner's hand and draw a card. So that means that they'll have to cast it again, which is kind of cool. Alright, and we drew Gideon, which is good. Gideon pairs really well with Dragonlord Ojutai. They're going to play the Swiftspear back. That's fine. Ooh. Huh. That's really interesting, because that'll let our Dragonlord Ojutai play offense and defense. I think we still want to put it in the graveyard and transform the Search for Azcanta, which will give us the most mana. Okay. Alright, so we will now play the Dragonlord Ojutai. And we'll pass the turn. So we're hoping that our opponent has cards that require white casting cost in their hand and are not drawing white lands to cast them. And it looks like we're going to be able to get through the first series of these. Alright, cool. Alright, we draw a basic island. We are going to attack with the Dragonlord Ojutai because the Gideon Jura is going to allow us to not take any damage from the Monastery Swiftspear next turn. Huh. We're going to take the Detention Sphere, I guess. Put these in any order. Play that land. Play the Gideon Jura. Force our opponent to attack the Gideon Jura, and then pass the turn. And then if our opponent plays a creature, we can Detention Sphere it, plus activate Celestial Colonnade, plus Gideon Jura. So our opponent needs double burn spell here. Okay, they have an Ixalan. That's not double burn spell. Cool. Alright, it looks like we're somehow going to manage to have locked our opponent off of lands and win game 1 against Burn, which is really cool. Alright, so we're going to go to... So we're going to go white, blue. Alright, so that'll give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, no, we can just do that. Okay, so, yeah, I'm overthinking this a little bit. So we will cast the detention sphere. That's fine. Target the Ixalan, then activate the Gideon, and then attack for 11 damage exactly. Alright, guys, excellent. Alright, so we are up a game against Burn, which is nice. Alright, so against Burn, we were going to want Dispel. Try to make it easy for you guys to see what we're bringing in. Dispel's good, so we'll bring in 2 Dispels. Then we have 1 card in the sideboard that's specifically for this matchup, which is Timely Reinforcements. In addition, Blessed Alliance allows us to gain some life, so I think those are really good too. Some cards that are a little bit worse. Jace is not great in this matchup. Detention Sphere is not great in this matchup, but it was fine there for finishing. Vendilion Click's not great in this matchup. I like trimming some number of Spreading Seas, especially on the draw. Usually just 1. That's a little bit too slow, I think. And I think, honestly, a Supreme Verdict is a little bit slow. So we're going to cut these here and bring these in. Some of these cards are good in small numbers, like 1 Verdict is probably good, 1 Detention Sphere, 1 Spreading Seas is probably good, as you saw in that last game, but drawing them in multiples is really, really bad here. You could definitely make an argument for cutting a Cryptic Command, and maybe we should be cutting a Cryptic Command over a Spreading Seas, but we can figure that out a little bit later. Alright, well, this hand has Spell Snare, which is really good. I think I'm going to keep it because it has double Counterspell plus Path, so it can deal... It has the ability to interact very well with what our opponent's trying to do turns 1 and 2. Alright, our opponent plays a Swift Spear and is going to get in at us here. Alright, so this is a plan that has a really high upside and also a really high downside, and I think it's probably worth it. What we're going to do here is just play this Flooded Strand, and then based on whether or not our opponent plays a 2-mana spell this turn, crack it for a spell and cast a Spell Snare. If they only cast a 1-mana spell, we'll just path the Monastery Swift Spear, fetching a Plains. Okay, and our opponent's Lava Spiking us. And Lava Spiking us again. Alright, so in response to this other Lava Spike, just so for maximum F6 value, I'm just going to go ahead and get the Plains now and path our opponent's Monastery Swift Spear. Alright, so now there's a big question, which is... So, basically we got a little bit punished, because I really wanted to get basic Island off of that land, but we were going to take 3 more damage if we did that. So we have a couple of options here. The first option is that we can play the Celestial Colonnade and pass, which next turn will give us double blue mana. Or we can play Minamoto to hold up Spell Snare this turn. Or we can play Minamoto and Spreading Seas our Plains so that we can hold up Logic Knot next turn. And draw a card. I think we're just going to get the Celestial Colonnade down and hope that nothing really bad happens to us. Opponent has 4 cards in hand. We're most likely dead here. All right, so our opponent suspends a Rift Bolt. And Skull cracks us. Okay. So we're down to 9, and we'll be down to 6 once the Skull Crack resolves. Or once the Rift Bolt resolves. Alright, so we're going to play the Minimo, and we have to use the Serum Visions, I believe, or we're just going to be way too far behind. And we need some sort of clock, so I'm bottoming a couple of cards that are not allowing us to put a clock on our opponent. I don't want to cast the Spreading Seas on our opponent unless we know that we can cut them off a color. It's getting to the point that we kind of just need to draw cards, so we might want to do it next turn. But I think this turn I was willing to let it go. Goblin Guide. Okay. That's fine. That'll take us down to 4. Alright, we have a Sphinx's Revelation on top of our library. Huh. Okay. Okay. And then once again, I think we're kind of forced at this point into using the Serum Visions. You can certainly disagree with the with my thought process throughout a lot of this game. I'm not even going to pretend that it was correct in a lot of cases, and it turns out that it was incorrect in a few cases. If we would have started this game by playing an island, I think we would have been in a little bit better off position instead of trying to hold up the Spell Snare plus. Like, even if we would have taken 2 more damage off of our lands there, we would have been able to use some more of these spells in our hand. Right now, we're just stranded with a lot of spells in our hand that we can't currently cast. I'm going to just go ahead here and use the Snapcaster Mage and path the Eidolon, or the Goblin Guide here, because taking 2 damage here is pretty much the same as taking 3 damage. If our opponent wants to use double burn spell to kill us here, that's fine. We can't. We played this game in a way where we were just dead to that. So we'll go ahead and we'll use this Path to Exile. Our opponent shouldn't have another mountain. They haven't shown another mountain. Then next turn we can hold up Logic Knot and or Rev for 2. Alright, so our opponent Skull cracks us. And they suspend a Rift Bolt. Okay. Well, that means we're not dead yet. If our opponent's just somehow bricking off the top, like, over and over and over again, which I honestly don't really see how they are, but they could have white spells in their hand. I guess we haven't seen a white spell out of them either game. Alright, so we need to Logic Knot, counter unless they pay 4. Alright, and we're amazingly not dead yet. Alright, we'll go ahead and use the Serum Visions now. Runed Halo. Flooded Strand. Both of those, I think, have to go to the bottom. Ruined Halo isn't any good if we don't really know what our opponent has, and I think that taking a chance and hoping that we hit, like, you know, the 1 out of 6 cards or whatever that our opponent could have doesn't seem to be worth the chance. So we just need our opponent to only have, like, white spells in hand for the next, like, 6 turns. Alright, we drew an island. That's great. If our opponent goes to bolt us or something like that, we're going to rev in response. Exquisite Firecraft. Well, that's one card that we actually can't counter, and we can't gain enough life for us to get out of it. So I guess we lose. Alright. Yeah, because we can gain 3 life, which will take us to 4, and then we just die. Alright. So maybe our opponent's just playing mono red, which is interesting. I saw some white cards, but we also really haven't seen them use those white cards in any sort of way. So I don't really know what to make of that. I think we boarded correctly. Alright, we have our Timely Reinforcements hand, so we'll keep it. We can Ruined Halo whatever their first play is. We will have to take 2 damage off of our lands, but we're going to be searching for some lands here. Off of the Serum Visions. Alright, we drew a Blessed Alliance, so we're drawing a bunch of cards that are really good in this matchup. We'll put the other land on top. I don't believe we're going to want the Snapcaster Mage, at least as not right now. Hope our opponent plays a Goblin Guide here. That would be ideal, because we know the top card of our library, and then we can just Ruined Halo it. Yep, okay, cool. So we get to draw a card off of this Goblin Guide, and then just Ruined Halo the Goblin Guide. I almost named Ruined Halo with the Ruined Halo in case you guys missed that. That would have been very funny, honestly. Alright. So we've got the Goblin Guide locked down under the Ruined Halo. If our opponent plays a Ixalan here, we're actually very happy because then we can just slam this Timely Reinforcements. We know we can't get Skull Cracked in response. See if they slam an Ixalan here. Nope, Swift Spear, but that's fine also. We're good with this. And a Lavamancer. Okay, we're cool with this because we can still get our Timely down, and our life total is going to be lower than our opponent. And yeah, it looks like everything's working out here. Alright, we drew a Dispel, which is a good card in this matchup. We do need, you know, a little bit more action than just this Timely, but this should let us block pretty well for a couple of turns here. Alright, so our opponent now can activate the Grim Lavamancer, which means that we need to be aware of that when we set our blocks. We do need to draw lands here. I think I'm inclined to do the full triple block here on the Monastery Swift Spear, because that means that our opponent is spending cards, not killing us. And there's no way these soldiers are going to be leveraged doing anything else. So they're probably going to use the Grim Lavamancer to get rid of one of the soldiers and cast a burn spell at our face. So that really means that this Timely Reinforcements is going to be saving us 8, is going to be gaining us 8 life, or possibly even 10 life, 6 life off of the Resolution, 2 life off the Grim Lavamancer, And then 2 more life off of the Monastery Swift Spear, which has been prowessed up here. Alright, so our opponent's bolting us. Or even if they're going to bolt us twice here, that means that they have to use 2 spells. And the 3 soldiers will save us 3 life, so that means that Timely Reinforcements basically gained us 9 life. Which is basically a 3-for-1. Their cards usually do 3 damage in general. Alright, and we're getting Skullcrack too. Alright. Well, that's pretty fine, honestly. Because then, yeah. Okay. Alright, well, our opponent, fortunately / unfortunately for us, we didn't draw land, which is, you know, fortunate for us, unfortunate for us, fortunate for our opponent. Oof. And I think I'm just going to take this opportunity now and path this Grim Lavamancer. The Grim Lavamancer, I believe, is a little bit scarier over the long run than the Monastery Swift Spear, because our opponent's down to only 2 cards in hand. And lands are not their bottleneck. Because we make our opponent sack an attacking creature next turn with the Blessed Alliance, even if we don't draw land and hold up Dispel back up. Alright, so a Rift Bolt's one of the cards in our opponent's hand. Alright, and they have an Ixalan. Okay. Our opponent's attacking with the Goblin Guide because they want to know, I guess, the top card of our library. That's interesting. Alright, so they know we have a Gideon Jura on top of our library, which we're going to get rid of. And we drew a Cryptic, which is not ideal. But we can make our opponent sacrifice an attacking creature next turn with the Blessed Alliance. Yeah, unfortunately we're not in a great shape here because we haven't drawn lands. We've seen 14 cards in our library, and there's only been 3 lands in there. No, we've seen 16 cards of our library because we scried 2 to the bottom, or 1 to the bottom. So 15 cards in our library. There are only 3 lands in those, which is unfortunate. Our opponent's hurting themselves too. Opponent Lava Spikes us, okay. Alright, let's see if our opponent wants to attack with the Goblin Guide too. If they're attacking with the Goblin Guide, that means they're playing around exactly Blessed Alliance. But they're doing that at the cost of letting us see the top card of our library. So we are going to go ahead and cast the Blessed Alliance. We're going to make you sacrifice a creature. And we will take 2 damage in order to cast this spell. Put Path. Jeez. Alright, so if we draw land off the top, what does that let us do? That lets us cast Cryptic Command to tap your team draw a card. But that doesn't really get us anywhere either. So basically we need to figure out whether or not we want this path. And I think we're just going to put it in the graveyard. We drew a tapped land, of course. Okay. Well, that's not great, but I mean, I guess it was fine because we were going to take 2 damage off of the Ixalan regardless. I think. Yeah, I'm trying to think how this would Yeah, we would have taken 2 damage off of the Ixalan by casting the path. This way, we are not casting the path, but our opponent has to Yeah, I don't know. It's results-based thinking. I think we were so far behind that we had to draw the land there. I think that's the correct answer, actually, to the puzzle. And Firecraft will kill us. All right. Good game, opponent. If we would have packed the Ixalan there, we would have had the same issue happen. All right, guys, welcome back. Round 4 here. We're going to keep this hand. It has a lot of interaction, and it's good against multiple different strategies. Not amazing against Thoughtseize hands. Won't lie. Alright, so we've got some tap lands that we can play here. Opponent taking the Verdict is really interesting. I'm not really sure what that means, other than they have a slow hand with a lot of creatures in it, I guess. Or they have no second land? Okay. Well, we'll take that too. I don't know what our opponent's playing. Maybe they F6 through their turn. I'm not going to path anything that they have. Maybe not. Never mind. Okay, Scavenging Ooze. I don't know if I want to path that or not. It's very aggressive to path that. Yeah. If it was a Goyf or something like that, I think I would have just Runed Halo it. The thing is that we can't leave a Scavenging Ooze on the battlefield because we have Snapcaster Mages. Alright, we'll go ahead and take 2 here, and we'll pass the turn. Because our opponent has 4 cards in hand, I don't believe this is a situation where we want to Vendilion Click during their draw step. The one exception to that would be if they have the card Tireless Tracker plus a fetch land. And I think that the chances of them having that are high enough where I do want to get them during their draw step here. If they want to use a removal spell on this Vendilion Click, I'm fine with that. They don't have Revolt. Okay. Phyrexian Obliterator. Goyf. Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with that. That's... Well, maybe we should take Abrupt Decay. Yeah, we'll take Abrupt Decay so that we can get their Tarmogoyf with the Runed Halo. I guess. So they have Goyf... Goyf Obliterator. And no more Abrupt Decay. They drew a Urborg. Okay. That's fine. Alright, so we'll go ahead and give ourselves protection from Tarmogoyfs. Tarmogoyf. Yeah, our opponent punted real hard there, thinking somehow they had Revolt. They should have used their Abrupt Decay on the Vendilion Click, and I'm not really sure what happened there, to be totally honest. Alright, so our opponent's drawn a couple of lands since the last time we checked in with them. Alright, so Phyrexian Obliterator. I kind of know what this card does, but not really. Whenever a source deals damage to Obliterator, that source's controller sacrifices that many permanents. Okay. Well, if we cast Gideon and we plus on the Obliterator, then it's not dealing any damage. So we'll go ahead and do that. And we're not dealing it any damage. And right now there's no lands in the graveyard and no creatures, so the Tarmogoyf's only a 2/3. Our opponent might be incentivized here to play their other Tarmogoyf. Okay, no, they've just conceded. Alright, that's fine. The one thing to note there is that the Runed Halo actually doesn't prevent our opponent from dealing damage to the Gideon. So they could have attacked it with the Tarmogoyf, but maybe they just didn't know that interaction. Okay, so our opponent's on black-green stuffs. Bringing in some number of Rest in Peace is probably fine in this matchup. We don't actually have all that much that gets turned off by it. It's just Azcanta and Snapcaster Mage, but they have Scavenging Ooze plus Tarmogoyf that gets turned off by it, which is kind of cool. Maybe bringing in both is a little ambitious, so we'll bring in one. In this matchup, you don't really want things in super multiples like that. Because our opponent's playing Phyrexian Obliterate, it leads me to believe that they're on a very aggressive slant of this, and we don't want to be having to block the Phyrexian Obliterator ever. It's just really bad for us. So we'll bring in the Blessed Alliance. I really don't like counter spells too much in this matchup, so I'm going to take out the Negate. Runed Halo is fine there. I'm not a huge fan of the card Runed Halo in general, but it seemed fine there. Trying to think of other cards here that are not great. Spreading Seas is probably not the best. It can make their lands a little bit awkward, but they're only 2 colors. We didn't see any man lands from them. If they have man lands, it's a little bit better. So maybe we'll cut 2 Spreading Seas. Yeah, and we'll cut the Logic Knot, I guess. Well, I guess we do need a way to interact with turn 3 Liliana, so that's the only way we have currently. Yeah, I don't know. What would you guys cut? Let me know in the comments below. Let's only go 1 Blessed Alliance, I guess. We're just gonna add a couple of cards here. Our deck is designed to beat up on this matchup in the first place, so we'll see. The only cards that can really get us are Liliana, Bob, and Tireless Tracker. Okay, this hand has Serum Visions, and it's on the draw, and it's Thoughtseize proof, except for the fact that it's reliant on the Serum Visions. This is another good decision, guys. Let me know in the comments if you'd keep or mulligan this hand. I'm going to keep this hand because I'm super greedy, but it could be wrong, because if our opponent Thoughtseizes us and we brick on a land 2 turns in a row, we probably just lose the match. But we have the Spell Snare, which is really good in this matchup, and our opponent mulliganed. Alright, so our opponent will probably take the Serum Visions here. And try to just strand us with 1 land. But we have a Spell Snare for next turn, which is really good. Especially if we draw a land off the top. Yep, they take the Serum Visions. And like a professional, we draw a land, which we won't show our opponent because we'll just play this island. This is what I meant by we have a Thoughtseize proof hand, which is that our opponent didn't really have a very good play there with their Thoughtseize. And like a professional, we keep drawing lands. So we'll go ahead and we'll play a tapped Hallowed Fountain. See if our opponent has a Liliana of the Veil here. Should be pretty good if they did. Interesting. That's a very strange play from our opponent. I don't do... Like, I'm curious, guys. Like, let me know, you know, again, down there. Is there something I'm missing with opponents just aggressively using Field of Ruin? Like, their mana was already perfect. They didn't really need to fix it at all. Do they not think that we, like, you know, put together a reasonable deck? Like, I don't know what they think is in our deck in terms of lands. Like, do they not think we have basic lands? It's not like it's a strip mine effect. We're gonna have perfect lands here. We're gonna go ahead and fetch this at some point. We probably won't do it here because we still want to draw some lands. Collective Brutality. Just kind of making us use the Spell Snare, so we'll use the Spell Snare. I think that was the outcome we wanted, right? Okay, they can take either a path or a verdict. They only have 2 cards in hand. They take the verdict. Alright, we'll just go ahead and get our second white source now. Alright, and we drew another path, which will make our opponent very sad. Play a land here. If our opponent has Liliana, we'll probably pitch a path. Alright, our opponent not playing anything is a good sign for us. Alright, we drew a land. We're definitely going to just go ahead and play this Ojutai. If our opponent has Liliana, that's good for them, but we're not going to play around a card that our opponent could have very easily resolved last turn. I guess what we could have done is we could have played the Runed Halo and named Liliana last turn so that our opponent couldn't make us sacrifice the Dragon Lord Ojutai. Our opponent's reading, and it looks like they might just concede to this card because, yeah. Alright, there we go. And we win the match. Yeah, our opponent's going to have a lot of trouble getting around the Dragon Lord Ojutai. It's going to get us card advantage. It looks like their only removal in their deck is Fatal Push and Abrupt Decay, so they actually don't have a way to get rid of it. Alright, this is a excellent hand. Welcome to round 4 here, or round 5 rather. We'll keep this. Alright, and we get to play against Grixis Death Shadow. This is going to be interesting. Oh, no, okay, it's the Hollowed One deck. Never mind. We're going to now be drawing and discarding random cards. Let's see what happens. If those of you who don't know how this deck operates, basically what it's doing is it is trying to cheat out cards like Hollowed One there, exactly. In very unfair ways. Okay, so we actually put ourselves in a really awkward position here where we don't have lands. So we need to draw into some lands. Runed Halo is actually very good in this matchup, so we'll go ahead and we'll top that. If we get to put that on a card that our opponent has multiples of, it's like a Wrath. Okay, so our opponent doesn't have any lands. This is very interesting. I think we're going to try to shut down their Blackleaf Cliffs next turn. And we do want all of these lands. So we're going to go ahead and actually just play this Plains here because we know that there's more lands on top of our deck, which is cool. If our opponent hits like another land here plus something else, we'll path the Hollowed One maybe, but I'd prefer to not to, I guess, is the best way for me to try to describe what our plan is here. Okay, they did hit another land. Interesting. So I think we'll just go ahead and we'll path this Hollowed One here, and then we'll make our opponent do something else to beat us. Alright, our opponent plays a Gurmag Angler. That's fine. We are just going to play this island and play this Gideon. And Gideon target the Gurmag Angler. pass the turn. So now our opponent needs to commit more things to the board. Alright, a Flame Wake Phoenix. That card's cool. Alright, they went after Gideon, which I guess can be expected. We are going to just deploy a Jace to the board, plus the Jace, and plus on the Zombie Fish, and pass the turn. So now our opponent needs to continue to put more things on the board because of the fact that Jace is now just at parity with... Oh, okay, that was a good draw from our opponent. So our opponent's going to get to Lightning Bolt the Gideon away, which is cool for them, not for us. Let's see what our opponent's attacking with the Flame Wake Phoenix. Alright, our opponent attacked the Jace. So I think I'm going to minus this Jace here, and more or less just sacrifice it to... we'll take the one with more lands in it. We're just going to kind of sacrifice it to the Flame Wake Phoenix here. Actually, I suppose what we can do is we can just tap down our opponent's stuff with the Cryptic Command and draw a card, and then use the Jace to draw a couple more cards. Alright, yeah, let's do that. So we'll go ahead and we will... tap all creatures and draw a card. The other thing we could have done is possibly bounced the Gurmag Angler to our opponent's hand, because our opponent wouldn't have been able to recast it. Alright, our opponent's going to bolt the Jace, it looks like. Alright, they didn't want us to draw more cards. Our opponent had a very bolt-heavy hand, which is kind of interesting. Alright, and we drew the Supreme Verdict, which is very good. So we are going to combination the Spreading Seas on the Blackleaf Cliffs here with a Supreme Verdict. Good, and then next turn we can draw a bunch of cards, like 4 of them. Alright, our opponent has a Flame Blade Adept, rather, which is a cool card also. This is one of the surprise decks so far of the Pro Tour. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, our opponent also has a Goblin Lore. Unfortunately, they can't bring back either of the cards with the Flame Wake Adept because I skillfully Spreading Seas them last turn. That was sarcasm. Yeah, let's just play basic planes and we'll pass the turn, planning on revving for a bunch here. If our opponent has something that we need to negate, we can negate. Okay, Goblin Lore. That's something that we should negate because it would allow them to get back both of their Flame Wake Phoenixes. So we'll go ahead and... oh, wait, actually, you know what? I think what we're going to do is instead we are going to path the Flame Wake Phoenix with the Goblin Lore on the stack. Yeah, I think I like that. And our opponent discards some more lands and then plays another Flame Blade Adept. Okay, that's fine. And we will draw some cards at the end of the turn. 3 of them. Which, yes, I know we could have drawn more cards, but I want to try to play something next turn that interacts with our opponent. So we will draw the 3 cards here. And that'll be the game. Okay, so our opponent concedes to drawing 3 cards. Sounds good to me. Alright, in this matchup, we probably want all the graveyard that we can because our opponent's going to have Bloodghasts, which is why we want the Surgical Extraction as in addition to the Rest in Peace. So we want all of those. We also want as many ways to interact with our opponent as possible early game. So we want the Rest in Peace, or the Blessed Alliances. We want our opponent to sacrifice their cards. because they're going to be making us discard cards randomly. Cards that are bad in this matchup, Spreading Seas is probably not great, especially when we're on the draw, so we'll cut 2 of them. Search for Azcanta is probably not great either, just because it's a little bit too slow. I could definitely see cutting a Cryptic Command, because we need interaction as quick as possible, and then also I'm going to cut the negate, because the number of spells that we actually want to negate is really low. Logic Knot has a lot more utility in this matchup than Logic Knot, or than negate, because they'll be playing things like Hallowed Ones for 1 or 2 mana, or 1 or 0 mana. Alright, well this hand has Rest in Peace into Gideon of the Trials, which is great, so we will keep this. Alright, cool, and no turn 1 play by our opponent is very good for us. That means that they're probably setting up a Goblin lore hand or something like that, as opposed to the Flameblade Adept Goblin lore hand. Alright, cool, they discarded a bunch of cards that did nothing, and now we can drop a Rest in Peace. Oh. Well, we can tap our mana, hopefully better, and play a Rest in Peace. Yeah, they got rid of their Hallowed One, which is unfortunate for them. So now they actually... Okay, and they're just concede from the game. Alright, guys, so you can see that this deck here is a little bit... The deck we just played against is a little linear, and... you know, a lot comes down to chance there. If they would have discarded a couple other cards and kept their Hallowed One, and played it there, and we played our Rest in Peace, and still had to stare down a 4-4, it would have been a slightly different position. But I hope you saw the power of this deck. I think a lot of the changes that were made for the Pro Tour were really good changes. We beat up on a deck that had a similar record at the Pro Tour. We beat up this deck here, which also had a really good showing at the Pro Tour. We beat a mono white deck despite me playing very slowly, and we had a little bit of trouble against the burn deck on game 3 because we didn't draw enough lands. But I mean, if you don't draw your lands against burn, you're going to lose anyway. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I had a fun time making these videos. Let me know if you want to see more of this deck or another deck. I'm still working on the Modern Miracles deck. Hopefully have another match of that, or another competitive league up of that soon. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.